Welcome on into the show, everybody. It is episode 9, season 8 here on the Hoopers Log. Season 8, episode 9 here on the Hoopers Log for Tuesday, November 16th, 2021. That's right, we are a full month into the season, and I am recording this episode way in advance, and I wanted to give my take on the Nikola Jokic situation that occurred on Monday, a little over a week ago. And the reason why I wanted to talk about it was because I found it very inspiring for a lot of things and from a lot of people's perspectives and intuitions and all those other things that it sparked up a big topic turning point and conversation piece that I felt that was necessary to bring up because I feel like a lot of people in their perspectives and points that they're bringing up regarding the Nikola Jokic situation took me a long time to really just digest and understand and listen to and what's regurgitate all those beautiful adjectives to figure out what you need to find out what you want to say. And knowing that the regular season in the NBA really is a marathon, it is not a sprint. 4 weeks in, we've got another 20 plus weeks to go till the end of the regular season, right? This is a very long journey for this year. And the Denver Nuggets are a team that when you look at their overall makeup of what they are and what they've been put through and what they've done. Last year they were the 3 seed in the West, right? And a lot of people, I think, would have an appropriate opinion of looking at them and say, they're a team on the rise in regards to their ability to go deep in the playoffs and make a run at a championship, right? Obviously, last year they lost to the Suns, and, the Suns did what they did and they got to the NBA championship. But in regards to the Denver Nuggets now and what they are and their representation of everything that they're going through and that they're doing, when you look at them and you see where they're at, they're kind of in the middle pack of the West right now, at least in the playoff conversation. And interesting things tend to occur and take place and happen as the seasons progress. Things start to caramelize and create and be made to head towards that championship run and that mentality. And I find that one of the most beautiful things that we have witnessed with teams when they win NBA championships is that there's key moments and there's key points and there's key situations and scenarios that you can pinpoint and point to throughout the history of time. You look at teams like the San Antonio Spurs for years. You can pinpoint times where you can sit back and say that's a reason why they're going to win a championship, or that's the reason why they're making the turn that they want to make it happen. They're going to get it done. Instances, scenarios. Los Angeles Lakers, even though they were supremely talented back in the day, there's a reason why they're in the spot where they are now. Same thing with the Bucks. There were moments and there were key situations and times where you could pinpoint scenarios and opportunities and things, right? Same with the Lakers a couple years ago. Same with the Heat. Same with the Warriors. All these situations add up to why you win championships, whether it's in the short term, the long term, the process, you name it. This situation for Nikola Jokic to do what he did to Marcus Morris, or Markieff, or whomever the Morris one was. We all know the Jokic brothers and the Morris brothers got into it on Twitter. That's phenomenal content. But I found it interesting what the guys on inside the NBA said, and particularly Kenny Smith. And obviously a lot of people and a lot of interesting narratives came from this. And listen, my perspective is I really didn't like it from an overall perspective. What Jokic did was wrong, like flat out. There's no way around it. There's no debate in my book. It was ugly. It looked ugly. I felt it was over the top, inappropriate, and wrong. But I think the most interesting part and the most fascinating part of the entire ordeal is the overall message that it sends everywhere, outside of the actual incident itself. Sometimes an actuality of an incident can create reverberations, vibrations throughout the league in undertones of what's to come. And for those that don't know, over the last 2 or 3 seasons, the Denver Nuggets have been on a growth of the correct magnitude in regards to their ability to adapt and grow as an organization. They have taken the right steps. They have done everything to a T regarding culture. They have done everything regarding what you're supposed to do as a championship organization moving forward. And they've got, you can make the debate, a top 3 big man in the league in Nikola Jokic, a guy who's proven that he's an MVP candidate. They've got one of the better shooters off the ball in Jamal Murray, on the ball too at points. Will Barton, for the longest time, I think he's on a different team now if I'm not mistaken, but my point being is they have had a culture and Michael Porter Jr., they have had a culture and a scenario there in Denver that they have been growing for years. And Mike Malone is their head coach. They have got an absolutely stacked opportunity regarding what they've built there in Denver to be something of heavy, heavy significance within the Western Conference narrative. And I understand that we're super early in the season. I mean, damn, we're a month in. We're 1 month in of this 6-month charade marathon that we got to go through to get to the playoffs where it matters in mid-April. We're just starting the winter, people. It hasn't even snowed in portions of the country yet. We're not even there. We're still in the middle of the fall, right? And we're talking about situations and reverberations of reparations and repercussions that could be moving forward right now in November. So I found the Nikola Jokic retaliation an interesting topic to bring up, even though it was a week later, because I feel like this reverberation and this retaliation from Nikola Jokic, the incident itself, the constant view of the incident, right? I didn't like it. The in-the-moment incident, hated it. It looked awful. It looked terrible. Geez, come on, man. You don't need to go up behind somebody and do what he did. Absolutely not. The way he hit Morris in the back, it looked awful. It looked vicious. Even if Morris flailed a little bit and made it look maybe worse than it was, it looked awful. It looked absolutely awful. But the one thing that opened my eyes to the actual event itself and the message that it sent, and Kenny Smith said it perfectly. It wasn't the actual event itself, like I've just mentioned. I didn't like the event itself. But the message that it sent, that Kenny Smith said on Inside the NBA, before the NBA pregame, whatever, on Tuesday of last week, he said it perfectly. He didn't like the fact that what he did, in the heat of the moment. But there are sometimes instances where you have to stand your ground and take matters into your own hands. And sometimes the viewpoint and the perspective within the time frame of which it happened are not appropriate. But for the message that it sends moving forward is gargantuan and gigantic for the entity of whatever the rest of the season, the rest of the messaging moving forward for years to come, and all those things, right? And the Denver Nuggets are set up as a team right now where you can make the debate with the way the Western Conference is currently shaking out. I mentioned on the last show that the Golden State Warriors, another thing that happened right before my show last week on episode 8, I mentioned, the Golden State Warriors, they look great. Steph Curry, he hadn't been playing great. All of a sudden, he goes off for a 50-piece. He plays unbelievable basketball, which I completely couldn't get to because obviously I did my show the day before. And then on Monday night, all these crazy storylines popped up. But the Golden State Warriors obviously look like an NBA championship team right now. Super early in the year. No one's going to sit here and tell you you're going to win a championship in November. That's not happening. But the situation that Nikola Jokic put himself in regarding helping his team and the narrative and the story and the message that he has opened up now towards the rest of the league in some manner or some regard, from a aggressive, from a don't mess with me from a I'm not one to be reckoned with guy. Nikola Jokic's message for the rest of the league, and I hope it carries, because if it carries, boy, I tell you what, it will be one of those moments that I mentioned with all those other championship teams or those teams that got close for why they got to where they got to. You can even mention it with a team like Phoenix. Even though Phoenix didn't win the championship last year, that those 8 games they played in the bubble, those games they played in the bubble before they, got eliminated from the playoffs in Florida, that whole situation led them up to an opportunity to win a championship. They were 2 games out from winning a championship this past year, and everybody relates it back to what they did in the bubble back in August of 2020. Late July, early August 2020, when they played absolutely phenomenal basketball. They came up short. They didn't make the playoffs in that weird bubble atmosphere. But that mentality was something that Monty Williams said, carry on with you. And Kenny Smith said something beautiful. He sent the biggest message in Nikola Jokic. He sent the biggest message in his retaliation. Shaq and Charles said it best. No one's going to hit me when they turn their back to me, etc. All that, and that's I agree with them on some regard. Like I said, I didn't like it because it looked so vicious and violent. Sometimes we forget as a species with how highly regarded we are as a unique, mammal that runs afoot on this planet. We forget the humanistic elements that we entitle ourselves to based on the systems we create for ourselves, right? We've created some systems in this world that we fall into to make our lives either easier or more comfortable as we move forward, right? And that no one will ever fault anybody to ever fall into those systems to make life easy / comfortable / better. No one is ever going to fault anybody or anytime or anywhere. But I think when we are into those systems at some point, we step back and we forget sometimes that we have animalistic instincts. We have animalistic traits. Do we have other systems such as justice systems, jails, prisons, mental hospitals themselves, things to that nature to help redirect that behavior, to hope and help redirect that behavior, to prevent us from being as animalistic as we can be as a species? Yes, absolutely. And obviously there's going to be consequences for your actions at all times, and whether that's negative or positive consequences is to be the case. But there's also levels to those actions of those consequences, right? There's the immediate impact, which is what happened with the Jokic thing, because when you see it on an 8 to 10 second clip or a 5-second clip of the same image you see constantly or in the moment within that minute of when it happened, you think, oh my God, like this is barbaric. This is absolutely unacceptable. This is not allowed. This should not be okay, period. Because you went from a cheap shot in Markieff Morris or whatever the brothers are of the Morris twins, goes up and does what he does. You're like, dude, what are you doing? And then Jokic, in a split second, turns into this complete barbaric mongoloid, and he goes absolutely AWOL on one of these Morris brother twins, and he goes out and does what he does. And you sit there and you're like, what the hell just happened, right? You sit there and you say, what did I just witness? I just saw a dude go absolutely crazy, stand over a guy after he back-checked him about 15 feet forward. And you're sitting there and you're like, this is like not acceptable. This is not the 80s. This is not the early 90s. This is the 2020s. We don't do this anymore as a sport, as a species. This is not acceptable, right? But it's the consequences and the message that we also forget to see because we're in that, again, animalistic. We're in that instant viewership perspective of what we've just seen, right? We sit there and we view the immediate impact of the play itself, and we say, wow, that's not okay. That needs to be reprimanded. I even said it at the time when it happened. I said, how is this dude not suspended for at least 30 games? Like, let's just be honest. This, again, from a visual, you know, image of the league perspective, how do you even allow that image to take place, right? What was the overall consequence that came from this? Marcus Morris, I forget. I keep forgetting. Markeith, they change teams all the time now, so I keep constantly forgetting. Fined $50,000, and then Nikola Jokic misses one game. Something like that, if that would have happened, not too long ago, doesn't matter who the players were, that's like a 10-game, 15-game suspension at a minimum. I don't know what the new justification is of these type of suspensions, etc., but by the way it looked and the way Nikola Jokic approached Morris, by itself asked for a very long suspension. You could tell by the intent of the circumstance and the situation on first glance, you're like, not acceptable, not okay, gone. Because if you did that in real life, think about that. If you did that outside of competition, you're playing a basketball game in a park, and dude does that on the court. I don't care if he walked away or it doesn't matter. If someone then all of a sudden came up and back-checked him the way Nikola Jokic did, he's going to jail and being pressed charges for assault. That's just facts. There's no way around it. From the civilization perspective, right? From us as people who don't play this sport at a professional level, that's how we should view it. That's what it looked like, and that's where people who say that kind of thing, I'm on board, and I totally see it. And to another degree, I agree with it. And I totally also see Shaq and Charles Barkley's perspective of, no, you don't just go up and you do something like that and then walk away and expect not to get checked. Now, I think people who feel like the assault side that I just mentioned come out and say, Nikola Jokic, he would have been charged with assault, etc. I think if Nikola Jokic would have came up in front of Morris and said, hey, like in front of him, not even said, just went up in front of him and then pushed him to the ground and faced him up front and did that, I think it'd be a way different story. And I think it would actually have been in Nikola Jokic's favor in all angles, because then Kenny Smith's point would have made more sense, which I was going to get to. I sidetracked, but it's an important sidetrack, because I feel like if he had actually gone up in front of Morris instead of come up behind him, charged like a raging bull, and absolutely decked him like he did from the back, if he would have just come up around in front of him and absolutely cocked him in the front and just decked him moving forward and knocked him on his ass instead of on his face, I think everybody else would have sat back and said, he kind of asked for it, right? But it seems more of like a cheap shot from when he does it from the back, right? And that's where people get the nuance and the language of the situation and the overall construction of the situation, where they sit there and they say, if he would have just come from the back and maybe come from the front instead of did what he did, maybe I would be more on board, or I could see what he did. But no, like that's just no. And that's where I understand, and I sit there as somebody who's not a professional athlete, or as somebody who's not in that arena, literally not there at all, and I get that, and I say, no, yeah, if this was like at a park, this would be flat, full-blown assault, dude would be going to jail, and he'd be getting charges pressed, and he'd probably not be able to get out. Like, that's legit. I see that, and I actually side with that to majority of the situation. But again, it's the message. It's the unintended consequences, the good side of the message regarding what he did in regards to what he's telling his team, which is exactly what Kenny Smith was saying. See, in the octagon, this is not MMA, I'm just using it as an example. In the octagon of professional sports, there's always going to be head games, psychological, sociological. There's always these floating headspace games that happen. Let's all be 100% honest. 80% of these athletes are all on the same board. in the same boat physically, right? Physically, 80 to 90% of these athletes can all pretty much do the same thing. There's always those 10%, those guys who are just absolutely out of this world athletic that we all understand, like guys like Vince Carter in his prime, guys like LeBron, guys like Kobe in his prime, guys like, you know who I'm talking about. Guys who are absolutely physically intimidating and crazily good from a physical perspective, right? All professional athletes can all relate for 80 to 85, 90% of the reasons and rationales, right? But then there's those 10%, 10 to 20% where we sit back and we say, oh yeah, that guy's just different. He's a freak of nature, right? But the part that differentiates those who are absolute legends and those who are just another piece of the puzzle are the guys who have it between the ears. And Kenny Smith brought up a perfect example. I'm telling you, you have to go rewatch the pregame show on Tuesday, November 9th. You have to go back and rewatch the pregame show and really, really watch what Kenny Smith says. Pause it, listen, and really take it in. I wish I had the clip with me. It's really it hit me good. It really opened my mind and really inspired me to do this show now. Like now. I'm recording this way in advance. I was just sitting there inspired because it opened a part of my mind that I hadn't thought about in regards to, how I see things as a human, whether it's my own personal life, whether it's sports, whether it's work, it doesn't matter. It opened my eyes to not reacting to immediate scenarios regarding, what Nikola Jokic did, which we all get, and I just explained why we're there. But the messages that are sent sometimes in the certain arenas that we are provided with, those can be viewed and be taken as important steps, important moments, important opportunities to show to others what the value of what you're doing is, even though in the moment, it's not the most favorable. I could go into so many singular opportunities in my life regarding the last month, just at work, with my kid, with my family. The choices we make in life sometimes are so important that down the road they're bigger than what we think, right? Like let's say our kid, for example, my kid, doesn't matter, could be your kid, doesn't matter. They're doing something, whatever, and we decide to shut it off at the valve, right? We shut it off at the point where we say, no, we're not allowing that behavior to continue. So we make the actions a front to make it happen. It may not be the prettiest thing you've ever seen. It might not be, cordial or what's supposed to be done, right? But you make it happen. It sucks in the moment, and you may not like how you did it, but you may have gotten the message across down the road. It's a very similar situation that happened with Jokic. Granted, in a very, very, very physical, crossing the line manner that I think should have been disciplined to a higher magnitude. And I think to a magnitude that should not have just been one game. I actually think he should have been suspended for probably 2 months because it was that vicious. It was. That was scary. Like, that's legit scary. That was a legit assault-like mentality that you saw on his face, that you saw that he attempted at. Morris was in the wrong. He put a cheap shot down. But Jokic came at it from a perspective that was, okay, dude, like, this is next level. You got to tone it down. This is some over-the-line stuff. But that's the difference. What Jokic did is the difference between, and again, Kenny Smith brought it up, guys like Blake Griffin for their entire career. We can look at Blake Griffin as one of those guys that we can look at and say, yeah, he's in that 10% of freakish athletes in the prime of his career. We all seen the dunk competitions. We've seen the dunks live in games. We know Blake is in that 10% of the guys I'm talking about physically who are absolutely uncanny with what they can do. But from an overall between the ears perspective, can we all not at least agree on this? Blake Griffin is one of the softest, mentality-wise players for what he had physically we've probably ever seen. Blake Griffin should have achieved so much more in this league. if he would have just had a better, more tough, well-rounded mentality. He's an unbelievable talent this league has ever seen. One of the most talented power forwards we've ever seen athletically, ever in this league. But he may have had it a lot better if he physically would have toughened up a bit and found a way to send messages the proper way. I don't think Blake Griffin ever needed to be put in a situation where he needed to send a message in a psychological manner in a ball game, not to the degree of Nikola Jokic, but you get my point, to the degree of which it showed maybe he had some kind of backbone. Maybe he had some kind of inner wickedness to him that would show, okay, I'm not going to mess with that dude. Or I'm not going to do that. Every single time you've seen Blake Griffin on a basketball court, from my perspective, I've seen Blake Griffin play live. Every time you watch that guy play, you're like, that's a bad mamba jamba, but, that's the key word, but, I could get in his head. Or I can out-bully him in certain situations. Or I can do this to him and it will bug him and it'll make him kind of go away. Maybe he'll come back here and there and make a couple of highlight plays, but he's not going to impact the game to help win. What Nikola Jokic did to that Morris brother was he sent a message to the rest of his team saying, you know what? You're going to punk me, right? And everybody's going to see you punk me. If Nikola Jokic had just shrugged it off with what Morris did and said, it doesn't matter, right? Which, in my opinion, probably should have been the better response in the immediate impact, right? But the long-term ramifications of especially where we are in today's era of things, social media, everything else, the long-term ramifications of what he did and what he represented and opened up to everybody else within the league says, you know what? I'm going to cross a line here. In fact, I'm going to blur and I'm going to absolutely obliterate that line. In fact, I'm going to crash a car through that damn line. I'm going to crash that car. I'm going to crash the ship. I'm going to explode. I'm going to pour gasoline in the fire of the line. That is what I shouldn't do. But you know what? I am going to make very, very ever clear. And I'm talking, you ever had Everclear? I'm telling you, it'll make it clear for you. Trust me, it'll clear some things out for you real quick. That nobody is ever going to try to punk me or punk this team, because our mentality is to win a title. Now again, let me reiterate, because we have this TikTok mindset today where we forget things of what people say 15, 20 seconds ago, because all we do is sit on our phone and scroll up or scroll down or scroll left or swipe right, whatever the word is. But I don't condone what he did in the immediate impact. What I do see, though, based on what I had learned, not just from the inside the NBA, but from everybody else's perspective and everything else that I've seen, is that his message was read loud and clear from multiple angles. First of all, I think he should have been suspended longer. I think it should have been at a minimum, honestly, 15 games, a month, month and a half in NBA terms. Really, 15 games is about a month and a half. He really should have been suspended that long because it was vicious. But from the other side of the consequence, you look at what the team now can look at in regards to their leader. There is now zero, and I mean there is now zero question, knowing what Nikola Jokic stands for regarding the importance of somebody and their messages that they're trying to send to him compared to what Nikola Jokic is going to send. This isn't like Nikola Jokic is, third team All-NBA and, averages 12 rebounds a game and, gets 18 points and 7 assists and, kind of like Kevin Love. Like, that's kind of the great example that I think a lot of people compared Jokic to, was a Kevin Love type, but probably with better vision and obviously better pass. Nikola Jokic is way better than Kevin Love. But you get my point. Kevin Love had immense talent when he was on Minnesota. He was one of the best power forwards in the game at one point. And We all know the strengths of Kevin Love. We all know the strengths of what he can provide and everything. But you never felt that Kevin Love was ever going to cross that line to show that he had that it factor, right? He came close to a couple of MVP votes back in the day, right? Nikola Jokic is not a Kevin Love, right? Nikola Jokic is a first-time All-NBA. He's debatably the best center in basketball. He's the reigning MVP of the league. His team, multiple occasions, has been a top-end team, seed-wise, in the Western Conference. And from an overall perspective of what they need now, more than anything, because they have proven, as a unit, they can go deep in the playoffs, they can play with anybody, they can make in-game adjustments, they can shoot with anybody, they can get hot, they have the star, they have the stars when they're healthy, they have the unit, they have the head coach, they've got the culture. The only thing now that they need to prove to be in this conversation of the top upper echelon teams in the league to get to that championship mantra is to enable that toughness and to enable that mentality of, I don't just want to be here, I want to break through that just be here and be in the conversation of being a title contender. The moment like this, where Nikola Jokic can say, no, we're not just going to exist. We're not just going to clipper our way around everywhere. And I'm talking, when I would say clipper our way around, I'm talking about Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, super talented, fun to watch, Lob City, oh my God, so much fun, this is great, don't you just love watching the Clippers, they're just amazing, aren't they just a great time, to then being champs, to then no, we're not just going to pussyfoot around, we're going to come out here, we're going to come out and absolutely dominate, right? Again, crossing lines, being over the top, not a fan of at all. But it's the message now to that team. And maybe I'm just coming at it from an old school angle because that's what Chuck and Shaq were saying from the old school angle. They were saying it from the old school angle. Like, no, you don't do that. Obviously, you got to evolve, right? But from the standpoint of what the Denver Nuggets need is a kick in the pants of, hey, guys, we're right there on the doorstep. Is this good enough? Do you want guys to come at us and think that we're a bunch of chumps? Nikola Jokic's messaging was huge. It was absolutely huge. He sent a message to the rest of the league saying, y'all think we're this soft? Y'all think we can't contend with you? Y'all think we're not going to be able to do anything we want in the playoffs because you think you can come at me and play these games? We're not trying to play games in Denver. We play at 5,000 feet. Come play us when we got home court advantage in the playoffs at any time in the scenario. Or if you're down or if the series is tied 1-1 and you come back to our town in game 3 and you're winded and you're deep in the playoffs and you got to play against me, Nikola Jokic, and my badass teammates, you think you can come in here and punk us? You got a different thing coming. Because now, early in the year, 3 weeks to a month in, people are going to look back in April, got my A's mixed up, April and in May, throughout the grind of the playoffs. And if they have to go to Denver in a game 3, and they're like, okay, how can we get an advantage? How can we do this? Can we undercut a guy here? Can we do this? Can we stick our elbow out a little bit more on this situation to kind of get under this guy's skin? Can we do that? Yeah. And what Jokic did from a mentality, psychological perspective is he cut the corner. He cut the corner. Chris, it's not fair. It's not fair. He cut the corner. But I don't care. Listen, these dudes make millions of dollars. They're at an entity and a mindset of professional athletes that 99% of us will never understand. We will never understand the mentality of how these guys got here. Every single one of them. None of us will get it. A lot of NBA players, I wouldn't say a lot, I'd probably say about half the NBA players, have gotten here based on their talent alone, and they're just skating through it because they know they're getting a sweet paycheck and they're living the life. And there ain't nothing wrong with that. Ain't nobody going to fault you. I don't fault you. Shoot, I wish I was that talented and making millions of dollars just bouncing a basketball, playing 15 minutes a night and scoring, 5 points and whatever, and, getting where I need to get to just off my talent alone. That's fine. But then there's guys who take it to the next level and want to win. And I think we clearly know what side Nikola Jokic is on. This dude will do anything from every angle, psychologically, sociologically, whatever the angle you want to take, and say, no, I'm going to win on my terms and make it happen. Now, obviously, he has to follow through with that. Now, obviously, he has to come out and now keep going back to the well of the MVP edition of Nikola Jokic from a year ago. He can't just sit there and say, I knocked the dude out and all of a sudden I'm a badass. No, that's not what's going to happen here. He has to follow through with that message and make sure that it is known and keep it up. Now, don't get me wrong. He shouldn't go at things anything like he did from an aggressive perspective. But in regards to standing up for teammates, in regards to doing things in a more smarter fashion, if need be. Like if next time this happened, he went up around a guy and went up front, grabbed him by the jersey and told him off and said, you better not effing know who you're dealing with, right? From, that perspective. And he told him straight up, you're not going to punk me like that, you little na-na-na. Okay. I think everybody would be way more on board with like, dude, you don't mess with Nikola Jokic. You don't mess with Nikola Jokic. He sent shockwaves through the entire league with what he did in regards to the aggressive nature and the fashion that he did. Everybody's on notice now. Everybody. Not everybody's going to be like scared dogs when they play Denver. That's not the case. But now they know, okay, this dude might have a screw loose. This dude might physically hurt me. That's a psychological advantage from a professional sports perspective, not real life, not like I said, if this was real life, he'd be in jail, it'd be all that stuff, right? But from a sports perspective now, it's oh damn, this dude might be the best player at his position, and he's got a screw loose, and he's finesse and talented and physical at times. Oh, what do I do? I don't know if I can get an edge on this guy. That little creep of doubt is sometimes all guys need. Listen, I brought this up last show with Damian Lillard and a little bit with James Harden. These guys don't look the same, right? Whether it's because they're not getting foul calls, whether it's because athletically they're just kind of deteriorating, in James Harden's case especially, they need that little bit of an inch. They need that little bit of an edge. And when they don't have it, you start to see what happens between the ears, and you start to think, well, do they have it or do they not? And you start to think, well, that's what it comes back to, is that mentality and that confidence and that mindset. And if you don't have that, and that's not something that's going to help you and get you to where you need to get to, confidence changes everything, man. And what Nikola Jokic has done is put a creep, an ounce of doubt in anybody who's his size in the league and said, man, that guy, I really don't want to screw with that guy. Doesn't mean they're scared or they're going to run away and, freak out or anything like that. No, what it's done is it's allowed for him to put a nugget in your mind, no pun intended, but to put a nugget in your mind that if you aren't playing basketball the right way and you try anything funny, try anything fishy, it might put you somewhere else. And it doesn't mean he's gonna kill you and all this stuff. No, that's not what it is. It's just that little bit of that edge. And I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal overall. But what I'm trying to say is in those crunch time, those grinded out moments, those, late in the fourth, you're tired, you just kind of want to get through and play a little bit lazy just to get through to somewhere, do what you need to do or whatever, or you just want to try and get in someone's head or send a message. You ain't going to be able to send that message to Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic don't care about messages. I mean, he might care about it in regards to his ability to defend and deal with his teammates. But in regards to his ability, even though I know he apologized about the whole situation and said he should have handled it differently, he clearly went to go out and send a message about, no, you're not punking us. And what he's on is he's on this level of now where it's, yeah, I'm a bad man. I'm the best player in the, he can say that. He's the defending MVP. I'm the best player in the league. This is what I do. I'm the best player at my position, at least. That's what he has. He can make that claim. It doesn't mean it's true, but he can make that claim based on last year. He can definitely be in that stratosphere of, yeah, I'm the best player. I'm the best player at my position. I can be the best player in the league. And he can make that claim and say, what you got? You want to come at me? You want to play these little cheap foul games? You want to think you can throw an extra elbow or set a crappy screen, or you think you can get under my skin, or you're not going to get under my skin. So how's that going to work? So then if somebody who tries to play those games, they might get out of their own game. Again, between the ears, psychological. That's what he's provided. And the message he sent back to his team stating, nah, you're not just going to not do it to me, you're not going to do it to this team. It might help the team in regards to down the stretch, late in the year, when things get muddy, things get tough. Whether they go through a tough road trip or they go, they lose 3 in a row or something like that. That's where Nikola Jokic has to then make the next progress of, remember when I did that? Or do you remember this situation in this moment when I defended you, or etc., blah, blah, blah. Chemistry, right? This is another ounce of boosting that chemistry. In a very, very raw, rough manner, this is a better, next level way of improving chemistry on a team where they're already on a path and a paved way, a speedway. I wouldn't call it a speedway. They're on a sweet journey of doing things the right way to win a title. Teams who usually win titles go through situations, a la the Milwaukee Bucks. Teams usually go through. The teams who win championships, what feels like randomly when they've been so under the radar or not where they need to be, they go through stuff like this. Nikola Jokic doing what he's done is similar, not the same, violent manner, but similar manner in regards to how they get reacted to by, whether it's social media or generic people in general. And then before you know it, it's like, wow, they won an NBA championship. How'd they do that? I don't know. Maybe because they pushed the limits. Maybe because they did something that was unorthodox that they felt was going to be the right thing to help fix them, whether it's between the ears, for the team, for some player, or whatever. They try to expound the limits of what their team and their situation and their own play can be so that they can do whatever it takes to win. Unfortunately, like I said, 50, 60% of athletes are just in this league, in all leagues, really to just have a paycheck and play. Yeah, they got to come out with a mentality and their confidence and all that other stuff. But let's be honest, they're kind of just running through the muck. It's the guys who do stuff like this from a try to get an edge perspective, not the violence, just that edge perspective, where you sit back and you say, damn, that guy is trying to do everything he can to win. And that's part of the reason why I think a team like the Denver Nuggets can sit back and be in the conversation for a championship. I said this back in early October when I made my predictions before the year. Mid-October, early October, before the year. I put the Denver Nuggets in the NBA championship this year. I said that they've got an opportunity now with everything in front of them. If they're healthy, if Nikola Jokic is playing the way he can, and especially if Jamal Murray's playing, because dang, if he's playing, they're tough. They are hard to beat. But it's these kind of situations, these kind of moments where when you answer it now it's all about answering it for the Denver Nuggets. They've got to come out now and understand that they are more of a unit than before, because guys who come out and play like that and try to punk Denver, that's not going to fly anymore. Doesn't mean it's over and that they're not going to get punked next week. I'm just trying to say that in regards to the message that was sent, because Kenny Smith said it great. He sent the right message back. Key. Brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It's next level psychology that I just flat out didn't think about, because I thought about the immediate impact and the actual humanity of what he did. I sat back and said, damn, he needs to be suspended for like forever. I didn't think about the other ramifications of the consequences. That's the difference between how you start to see things from a simp perspective, from somebody who's just a simple-minded human being, to a next level, mammal slash animal that you can look at and say, okay, let's take a step back. Was it violent? Was it over the top? Yes. If it was a different sector of the world outside of the arena of professional sports, would it be seen as a crime? Yes. Yes, it would be. But we're talking about one of 30 arenas in the NBA that was played on one night for 48 minutes, down to the last minute and a half. And the next thing you know, a violent incident happened. Not so violent to the point where, my God, it was violent. It was violent. Easily could have been a felony in a different walk of life. But we're talking about a very finite situation overall. But the opportunity to cross the line that he did to then come out and make the reverberations around the league and for his team, they might pay off for a long-term reward that I think the Denver Nuggets have really, really, really been fighting for years. It's been years. We forget in the scenario and in the situation we are in our society with our attention spans and with where things are and, all the other, outside noise, right? But if you take the long-term situation and opportunity of things when they happen and when they occur, and you just play it out with how fast things are now, with how fast the world is, whether it's news, whether it's information, whether it's workload, it doesn't matter. With how fast things are, sometimes you can't really do that. But when I heard what they said on Inside the NBA, and I heard them make those points, and especially what Kenny Smith said, it clicked. It was like, I might not be looking at it the right way. I might be looking at it because I'm looking at it not just from my perspective or what the masses would think, because let's be honest, 95, 98% of us, if any of us did what Nikola Jokic did, we're going to jail, and we're probably going to go to jail for a while, for a good year or so, for, second or third degree assault, big time, obviously big time charges. We're going to get in big trouble for it, right? It's going to happen because it's not okay. But we're talking about a finite situation in a very niche circumstance. And I think the one beautiful part that we can pull from it is a guy like Nikola Jokic, who I think sometimes we mistaken for not being as bright as he possibly can, because whether it's because he's a professional athlete or whether it's because of the way he conducts himself or for whatever reason, I don't really have a great gauge on Nikola Jokic. I don't know if he's really a bright guy or if he's, street smart or etc. I just know he's an absolutely phenomenally talented basketball player who looks like Vlade Divac but with way more skill. Like, that's what he looks like. He looks like a modern-day Vlade Divac. Which, for those of you that don't remember, Vlade Divac was absolutely phenomenal at passing the basketball for a big man and was finesse as heck and was incredible. He obviously could not score to the degree of what Nikola Jokic can do, especially from the outside. But in regards to that style of play, that's kind of how I compare Nikola Jokic, and I look at him and I say, man, I don't know. Is this guy really, smart, or is he just basketball smart, or, am I not giving him enough credit? Am I giving him too much credit? I don't know. So I don't have a great gauge on who he is as a person, because I just don't really grapple that with him. I don't really pay attention to him like that. I pay attention to a bunch of other players more than him in regards to mentality, because maybe I don't hear enough about it. But the point being is that maybe a situation like this, in some regard, I should look at it and say, that might have been a lot more brilliant than a lot of us are taking for granted. Obviously, from a us perspective, me perspective, little people perspective, I look at it and I say, wow, that's not good. But I didn't look at it in the context of the situation and the scenario and the atmosphere in the arena. Still not okay. But from a next level derivative perspective, you look at it and you say, he may have just done something that may have impacted the league regarding not just rule changes, because I think something like what he just did should not be a one-game suspension. I think in the future, they should look at this and have like a tiered system, better, at least a better tiered system. I know they have one, but they should have a better tiered system of what happened. But they should then look at it and be like, do we really want guys sending messages this way and only getting suspended for a game or 5? Like, I don't think that's appropriate. And if they make those adjustments, then obviously something like this will change that atmosphere. But at least for now, it's a animalistic message of saying, no, you're not going to come out and you're not going to play some cheap games with me. You're going to try and win, whether it's the right way, or you're going to come at me and you're going to do it the way that the game is supposed to play it, at least in my eyes. Again, it gives a little bit of a nugget in the back of everybody's head. I had to get that off my chest. I had to bring it up. I thought it was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant what Nikola Jokic did in one manner. Like I said, you've heard my whole show, and that's where I'm sticking at. I just found a lot of the perspectives over the past week regarding the situation, the fallout from the Jokic brothers and the Morris brothers, just absolutely hilarious. Just beautiful original content, just with them getting upset at each other and talking smack and all that stuff. That's just beautiful. That's just great in my opinion. But yeah, you know where I stand now, and again, just stuff to really open your eyes to regarding the entire situation, and I'm glad I got to get it off my chest. Okay, episode 9 is in the books. I promise you, next week, right before Thanksgiving. Isn't that crazy? We're already down the chute of Thanksgiving. Like, next episode 10 next week, we will have that. Oh, go listen to the Motorcade podcast, and obviously go listen to the W. They're breaking down the Pistons and obviously the WNBA for what's gone on over the past season, and they're also talking about the off-season moves, off-season transitions, points and periods for the situations for the WNBA, and then obviously the Pistons. Kate Cunningham's back. They're getting their revamped, remodeled situation put together. So go and listen to those, please, on the Lead Sports Media Network here for Podbean, Apple Pod. I don't know how my shows keep popping up on YouTube. I really don't know how that's happening, to be 100% honest with you, because I don't know anything about that stuff. All I know is I just put my pod into the Podbean atmosphere, and then it just goes from there. And for some reason, it loves my show. Maybe it's because it's seen my show on YouTube for 5-6 years now, and they're just like, yeah, let's Chris Morrison, Hooper's Log. Yeah, we know what we're doing. We're Google. We've seen this before. Maybe that's what's going on. I don't know. I don't do technology. I just literally come out and speak my mind, and I hope it sticks. And if it doesn't stick, well, then before you know it, I'll disappear. And that's kind of how the whole world works, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to go down a dark path, but that's just kind of how it goes. Anyway, episode 9 is in the books. Episode 10 is next week. Thanks again for listening, everybody. We'll be back then. Thanks again for listening. We're out. Deuces.